Hi, everybody. I'm delighted to join the conversations in this online event of WASC 2020. I'm going to give some ideas, some thoughts about the Westphalian Dilemma that my colleagues Klaas Otto Bene and Herman Bula have already presented. We have been talking about this issue for some time now, and here we are presenting the outcomes of our conversations. The Westphalian treaty, it was signed in 1648, and this was a legal agreement of nation states for them to define their policies and make their own decisions, avoiding conflicts across Europe. Today, the European Union is an attempt to reverse that balance, but not without significant problems, as made apparent by Brexit. The Westphalian Treaty had a powerful global influence in the creation of independent nation states throughout the world, rather than autonomous ones within the umbrella of a wider cohesive force. The current disagreements between the USA and China as two imperial powers has been highlighted by Klaas Otto Bene, and shows that that opportunities for a cohesive structure are not there. Herman Bula's question, just the Westphalian nation state or new in the international agreements, is a key question that we need to answer. I want to deal with this question and with Bene's modeling from the perspective of the viable system model, and discuss aspects limiting the cohesion and adaptation of nation states. The COVID-19 pandemic is one of the several aspects making particularly important to visualize what aspects are limiting cohesive forces in the global system. This is my own interpretation of the viable system model, which I'm not going to explain, but here I'm showing what I call the cohesion archetype. That is, what is limiting the opportunities for autonomous units to develop cohesion in the context of a larger unit. Here we have a description of the mechanisms necessary for this purpose. Autonomy versus independence. Today the challenge is considering the possibility of nation states operating autonomously rather than independently under the umbrella of shared values and ethical guidelines. This is in contrast to thinking in a superstate with a common global policy framework. We are now strictly thinking, how is it that we can build up shared values and ethical guidelines throughout the global system? Responses to COVID-19, as well as to climate change, limited natural resources, health requirements beyond their individual capabilities, and an equal distribution of health and income are instances of situations requiring global responses. These are challenges emerging from an interconnected world. Nation states are experiencing vital environmental pressures that exceed their response capacity. Dealing with them requires of a good cybernetics. Our challenge is connecting states, meaning creation, meaning regulation, meaning production, to the global demands of a fragile ecology. It is not good enough to say that the problem is systemic. It is necessary to acknowledge that the problem is the outcome of an organizational system that needs a good cybernetics. By containing complexity through autonomous systems, the strategy is adding resilience to the social system. Regulation is just that is necessary to enable organizational systems to contain innovative autonomous systems. What is the Westphalian dilemma? It can be argued that this dilemma is the outcome of administrative restrictions, restricting autonomous responses from the global to the local. These restrictions make less likely the local political feasibility of adequate social responses to crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 has highlighted the situation which affects globally the whole of humanity at the same time that affects universally to each individual. The pandemic affects families, localities, communities, countries, and larger administrative units, like, for instance, state nations, super-states such as the European Union, and the imperial states such as the USA and China. The same issue requires coordinated responses at multiple levels. Equally, controlling the COVID-19 requires vaccines to reduce the risks to the entire population. While these local global connections are not unique to a pandemic, they help to visualize the interdependent thread between them. At all levels, people need adaptive structures to the challenges of the pandemic and cohesive responses to deal with its large demands. Our responses to control the pandemic need reducing the magnitude of the threats and amplifying the quality of the responses. All levels need effective organizations. These are recursive structures that recognize the need for adaptation and cohesion at all the levels of the complexity unfolding. As this is shown in this diagram, where the global system is embedding the subsystems, and these are in their own turn embedding subsystems and so on. The Treaty of Westphalia had the implication of limiting administrative rights of national agents by creating nation states. The quality of the cybernetics within nation states can have as an implication varied organizational capabilities within nation states. It may reduce the adaptability and cohesion of the embedded agents. This might be the implication, for instance, of centralized empires, superstates, or national states. It may be argued that this is one of the reasons that certain countries have been more effective in responding to COVID-19 rather than others. It is interesting to think about how the good cybernetics, or the relative good cybernetics of certain countries allow them to respond much more flexibly and better to the pandemic. Equally, the use of resources to support one agent's adaptation may be done at the cost of the adaptation of other agents. For instance, a local approach to use vaccines may support the adaptation of one country at the expense of a more global adaptation. While for COVID-19 the bucket stops at the national level, there is no more global responsibility for this issue. For the embedded levels, the response capacity may be more flexible. For them, the bucket stops at the national level. For these levels, If there is no adequate cohesion capacity in cities or hospitals, the responsible people, local people, can improve their structure, if not inhibited by centralization, or can shout for more resources to the responsible authorities at the national level. This is a manifestation of how the nation states creates the Westphalian dilemma. Cohesion is necessary below the national level to increase resilience. This is building up good structural recursion, or in other terms, it is designing a system that adds cohesion at several structural levels from the national to the local. It makes sense to control infections as close to the local as possible. That is, it is necessary to give cohesion and autonomy to hospitals, care homes, communities, and others. This is necessary to constrain individual behaviors before infections start growing up exponentially. Cohesion is necessary below the national level as well as above this level, as we have argued already. It is necessary to have it at the more local levels of regions, cities, and localities, as well as in the embedding organizations such as the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and financial institutions. This is designing a system that adds cohesion at several structural levels from the local to the global. The reflection between problem solving at multiple local levels based on available data and imaginative modeling, and the improvement of conversation structures between experts, politicians, and citizens' capabilities offers a good deal of mileage to contribute to the current COVID-19 crisis. Unfortunately, the political and administrative constraints imposed by the Westphalian dilemma and the poor appreciation of structural recursion and related structural mechanisms reduce significantly our contribution to the current situation. The crisis of complexity characterized by globalization and universality will not stop with COVID-19. Increasingly, we may experience shared situations that are relevant to our ecology, as well as to each of us in humanity. Together, they require studying the recursions that need attention to overcome fragmentation, unfairness, and lack of social cohesion. I suggest that COVID-19 is a situation that may benefit us by being studied beyond its current manifestations. It may be an anticipation of the issues that are likely to affect humanity in the future. The management of the holistic as well as of the specific is an extraordinary challenge to our appreciation and management of complexity. Thank you very much. This is my contribution to the issue of the Westphalian the Westphalian paradox or dilemma.